Well, hello to my divas and dudes and all of the divas and dudes at home and anyone else who is watching that's interested in learning more about nutrition, about carbohydrates, about getting some really great ideas about how to get more vitamins, more fiber, things that are going to make you feel better every single day. So we are going to talk about carbohydrates today. This month has been talking about macros, macronutrients. We talked about protein. We talked about fat last week, and now we're going to talk about carbohydrates. How do you feel when you hear the word carbohydrates or carbs? What comes to your mind? What do you think? It's negative. Yeah. It's bad for you. It's good for you. Yeah, because people say carbs, and it's funny because the first thing I hear when people are like, I'm not doing carbs. And then I think, well, I hope that you mean like white bread and white pasta because carbohydrates, vegetables, and fruits are carbohydrates, right? Why I put maybe don't keep it simple, because what do we want to go for here? Complex carbohydrates, right? Lots of fiber, maybe it's got some protein in it, maybe it's got a little bit of fat. Things that are going to feed your body, feed your cells, have lots of vitamins and minerals and nutrients to make you feel better. And it's okay to have bread. We're going to talk about some good breads, right? What are you going to put on your plate that's going to serve you? So we're going to talk about those carbohydrates, why we need carbohydrates, how much of them do we need, how much is recommended, different types of carbohydrates, how you can get them, fiber. Are we getting enough fiber in our diet? We're going to talk about how to get more, how to stabilize your blood sugar, your energy levels, and some tools that you can use every single day. So I'm going to introduce myself again. My name is Brenda Morgan. I am a health coach nutritionist. I am a personal trainer, and I've been teaching fitness classes and working with Thrive Well for more than 7 or 8 years. But I've been in the health and wellness industry for more than 18 years. Yeah, now. And I also wanted to do a little public service announcement. I am on the San Antonio Mayor's Commission for the Status of Women. And on March 4th, March 4th is International Women's Day. So on March 4th, we're putting together an event over at St. Philip's College. It's going to be in the Sutton Center. Your alma mater. It's going to be in the Sutton Center, and it is going to be, so the Women's Commission is focusing on health and wellness. That includes mental health also. We're also focusing on domestic violence, getting people resources that they need for that. And we're also focusing on entrepreneurship, ready to work, helping to boost those women businesses too. So March 4th, if you want to come on out, Thrivewell is going to be out there. They'll have a table so you can come and support your divas and tell people how much this organization has helped you, how it's inspired you, and all these community connections that you make. And also in that, I also went on Sunday morning, we had a meeting with all of the Thrivewell instructors. So I also, again, want to encourage you, if you go to 3 classes a week, 3 diva classes or 3 Thrivewell classes a week, then you're an active diva or a dude. And that doesn't have to be just fitness classes. But I have to tell you, I got to meet more of the instructors there. They have walking classes. And one of the hiking instructors was telling me that there's a naturalist sometimes that comes on the walks with them. Yeah, and so they'll have 2 groups. They'll have one that just wants to go really fast, and then they'll have a slower group that they're just like learning about the environment and the leaves and the flora and the fauna, which sounds fantastic to me. There's also writing groups. what else? There's art. What other classes have you guys done that you like? Tai Chi. There's yoga. There's Boundless, which apparently has been put together. It's kind of it's a more of a mind body class, right? Being able to get up and down off the floor, a little more functional fitness, because I talked to the instructor that created it. And then I teach Nia on Thursdays up in Stone Oak. And then there are classes at Tri Point. So find something that works for you. Look at that e-blast that Jose sends out so you can see what other classes there are. But thank you so much for coming. And this nutrition class counts as one of those classes, right? So today we are going to learn about carbohydrates. All right. And I won't get too sciencey. I gotta pull myself back here. But I just wanted to kind of point out to you, when we're talking about simple carbohydrates, we're looking at like sugar, right? So each one of these little hexagrams would be a molecule, right? So that's a sugar molecule. That is a simple sugar molecule. That's glucose. That is what your body uses for fuel, what your brain uses for fuel. And then it often comes in twos. Disaccharides is what they call them. And then when they start chaining together, these little sugars are chaining together, it becomes more complex. This becomes a starch, right? And this comes into here. This is starchy, right? So see how it branches like that? Because it branches like that, the body can digest it, and the little sugars can come off of it more easily, right? Then when you get here to cellulose, that's fiber. The body can't pick off these little sugars, but this fiber is super, super important. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that too. You know, for like regularity, for stabilizing your blood sugar, that those cellulose fibers are really important.
Just for an understanding, give us an example of simple carbohydrates.
Examples of simple carbohydrates would be sugar.
Right, but the cookies, crackers, I mean, it's only sugar. I mean,
right.
I'm just having a hard. I understand the principle. I'm just having a hard time differentiating simple versus complex.
Right.
As far as how we would see it.
She's asking about the difference between a simple carbohydrate and a complex carbohydrate. Yes, well, you were talking about cookies and crackers and stuff like that. So anything that's very refined. So what happens to make those cookies and crackers delicious is they have to take out the fiber. They take out the germ. They take out some of the protein in it. It's processed. So wheat is not white. Right? So if you're seeing white bread or you're seeing white pasta, it's because they've taken out all the outer shell, and they've taken out the germ and the shell, and then it just is, I don't know how else to say it. It's just sugar. So when people talk about like eating potato chips or something like that, they're like, oh, well, you know, I don't really like the sweet so much, or I'm not having so much sugar because I'm eating a potato chip. Well, actually, the process, I mean, yes, it's salty, but the process has just, to your body, once you get it in your body, it's just like sugar. It's broken down like that. It's broken down because, you know, it might be a little bit starchy, but it's probably down to this point because of the processing of it, because it's so finely broken down, right? So the cookies are going to go into your bloodstream really fast. But if you have like a whole wheat bran muffin with less sugar, then it's going to stay in your system a little bit longer. It'll be slowed up, right? And it also has more nutrients. It would move it to the complex, right? But it has some simple sugars in there. So maybe, maybe a muffin is probably not the best example. You'll have some simple and some complex, but at least you're moving towards the fiber part of it, which we want more of, right? Thank you for asking that question. So when I ask the question, what are carbohydrates? What do you think about when you hear carbohydrates? People, the first response is, oh, negative, right? But what we're going to talk about is half of your plate needs to be carbohydrates. You need carbohydrates. You need it for your brain to function. You need it for energy. You need it for fuel. What happens when you're hungry? You can be honest. So, right. Okay. So the answers I'm getting are you start to get lightheaded. You end up eating too much, right? Right. What, lightheaded, a headache? Are you very nice? You're hangry, possibly, right? So focusing on those complex carbohydrates, that is going to make you less hangry because it's going to stay with you, and you'll get a really nice slow burn of the glucose. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more, but I'm just going to touch on it now because it's all about the carbohydrates, right? Is when you eat simple sugars that get into your blood system really fast, it spikes your insulin, it spikes your blood sugar, right? And then it has to go, or then it goes back down. Not, it doesn't have to, but it does, right? So you've got all this insulin in your system, you've got the glucose in your system, the insulin comes to take it away, but since it spiked so much, it's gonna crash down, right? And then you're not gonna feel so good. So if you decide that you're gonna have like maybe a low sugar, like say you're gonna have oatmeal instead of a sugary cereal, right? The fiber and the protein that we talked about, the protein in the oatmeal is gonna give you a nice, you'll have a little bit of a spike, right? Because you're getting some glucose, and that's a good thing. You'll have a little bit of a spike, but it's gonna burn right here, right? Because it's got fiber slowing it down. It's gonna digest a little bit more slowly. So we'll talk about it more, but that's why the simple sugars make you feel hangry. If you're pairing it with protein, if you're pairing it with fiber in that meal, then you'll get a nice slower burn. You'll feel fuller for longer. So we need glucose, we need carbohydrates for fuel, and all of the vitamins, and we're going to talk about phytochemicals, all of the vitamins that last month Suzanne was talking to you about, those come in your carbohydrates, those come in your vegetables, they come in your fruits, and they come in your bread, your pastas. You want to try to get them whole grain because there's minerals in the cereals and the pastas and the whole grains that you are going to get more readily in those breads. And we can talk about some ideas of a better choice for breads for you. And it also spares protein. So what happens is when you have glucose in your system, when you have carbohydrates in your system, then your body has fuel. If your body does not have that fuel, if it doesn't have the carbohydrates that it needs, it's going to start breaking down your muscle. Yes, some of it will go to fat, but I learn in my biochemistry classes that it's actually harder for your body to go in and get that fat. Because we keep thinking, oh, well, if I starve myself of carbohydrates, then it's going to eat up all the fat, which it does, some. But it's harder for your body to process it, to go and take that energy out of the fat. So it's gonna target your muscles, right? So it's gonna spare the protein if you make sure that you have the right amount of carbohydrates and that you're fueling yourself. And as we talked about, without carbohydrates, you feel tired and irritable and shaky, right? So we're going to find that good stuff for us. Again, here is our slide with the recommended daily allowance from the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. Carbohydrates, 45 to 65%. There are people that are only eating 20% carbohydrates. Maybe you don't want to be around them that much. Well, what happens then is then the body starts producing ketones. And we can get into that. It's a whole other, we can have like a whole keto conversation. But this is what you need. But what carbohydrates are you picking? Half of our plate is going to be carbohydrates. So let's talk a little bit about fiber. So insoluble fiber, I'm going to get over here. So insoluble fiber, it doesn't dissolve in water. It's not viscous. Viscous would mean that it's like sticky, right? You get water on it and it gets jelly. Like, do any of you work with chia seeds? Right? So you know how it gets like a gel, right? That's going to be your soluble fiber. We'll talk about that in a minute. I'm going to stand in front of it so you don't look at it. And it's not fermentable. Okay. So here, actually, I'm just going to go back and forth. Let's do it like this. So the insoluble doesn't dissolve in water. The soluble can dissolve in water. The insoluble is non-viscous. This will form a gel. The soluble will form a gel when it's wet. Okay? So the insoluble is not fermentable. So why that's important is because the soluble is fermentable. That feeds your gut bacteria. We keep talking about that gut microbiome. It wants fiber to be alive, to flourish. It wants soluble fiber. Now, this non-fermentable fiber is really good. And why is it good? It keeps you regular. That's really important, right? Because if not, if you're not, can I just say poop? Am I allowed to say poop? If you're not pooping at least once a day, right? You were talking about constipation. You didn't know that this was going to happen, did you? We're like, we're talking about poop. Yeah, if you're not pooping at least once a day, then you're talking about constipation, but impaction, and also having a lot of water, making sure that you're well hydrated is important to keep all that stuff flowing. But if you could see like the large colon, why people are getting like diverticulitis is because things are not flowing along. And so then what's impacted in there is pushing out the sides of the colon. It's pushing it out and it's trying to get out. And so you get little pockets. I didn't bring you a slide of that. I can next time if you'd like. But basically, eat your, you're like, that's enough of that. Thank you. But basically, eat your insoluble fibers, really, really important too. So the insoluble fiber, how do you get that? You get it from wheat, you get it from brown rice, you get it from a lot of different vegetables. The soluble fiber, as we talked about, so just like as a rule of thumb, just to make it like easy to remember, I like to remember that the insoluble fiber is mostly from wheat and that the soluble fiber is mostly from oats. Okay? But of course, that soluble fiber, as we were talking about the chia seeds, they make that gel. Flax makes that gel also, but you can get the soluble fiber in citrus. If I'm remembering, the peels of fruits like pears and apples, and thank you. I'm getting confirmation head nods that the peels of apples and pears and those things have soluble fiber in them also. And also our beans. Yay, the musical fruit. That's my...
Does it matter the type of beans?
Does it matter the type of beans?
Because there's different types.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that's great and the thing that we're going to talk about is variety. So she's asking, does it matter the type of beans? Variety is a big thing that we're going to want to focus on to get like total good health. Is different kinds of beans, different kinds of seeds, different kind of vegetables. And actually that's why I brought these tomatoes here today with all these different colors, because each of these colors is a different phytochemical. We'll talk about this more. I'm getting ahead of myself.
I always thought that beans kept you regular.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. But here's the thing, even though I'm talking about the insoluble fiber keeping you regular, the fact that this gut microbiome is getting fed by this soluble fiber is also keeping you regular, right? It's keeping everything moving along. All fibers, yeah, it's still contributing to it too. This is a good way to distinguish the two, but these are important too, because if everything is working right in your gut, if you're able to digest properly, then again, everything will flow out as it should. I have another question.
Okay, I pop just organic popcorn that I buy in a bag at Natural Grocers.
Uh-huh.
And just pop it and eat it with nothing on it.
Uh-huh.
Where would it fall?
You know, I'm gonna say, so she's asking about popcorn, just air popped popcorn. That I think insoluble fiber, because you can see sometimes, if I'm just gonna be real, if you look at your poop, sometimes you eat a lot of corn, it comes out the way it went in sometimes, you know, if you're not, and so chew your food if you want to get the benefit. You know, you told your children that, but are you doing it? Chew your food. Yeah, there's going to be like a whole other series on just mindful eating. We'll talk about that later. So yeah, I think that corn is going to fall in the insoluble fiber part of it, because then the inside of the kernel, that would be a more simple carbohydrate, but still very good. And it's not that simple carbohydrates are bad, right? Because some of the, when I say simple, there's going to be like more sugar. Like if you're eating fruit, right? Fruit has a lot of fiber, and it's considered complex, but there's also going to be, if you're eating a banana, you can tell the difference, right? But don't stop eating bananas. So I've had clients that say to me like, oh, I can't eat carrots, they have too much sugar. And I'm like, okay, well, also fiber. How long does it take you to eat that carrot? There's a lot of fiber in there that's slowing that sugar down, right? So you're going to have some foods that are going to spike some complex carbohydrates that might make your blood sugar go up a little bit more quickly, but that's okay in some situations, right? And again, you're pairing it with proteins or help to stabilize that.
Since she brought up popcorn, I've noticed that in most nutrition classes, corn is never mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
So where does corn itself stand in, I'm talking about regular corn, just eating corn.
Uh-huh.
Is that good? Is that bad? Is it a carbohydrate? Is it good fiber? Just corn itself.
Right. So she's asking about corn, and that in most nutrition classes, they don't even talk about corn. And that's a really good point. I think the first thing that comes into my mind is it might be because some people have corn sensitivities, right? So there's one reason right there. And also because it will be a little bit higher in sugar, right? But again, like we talked about, there's a lot of benefit. There's a lot of insoluble fiber in that corn. So all of these things in balance, and actually the recipe that I'm bringing to you today in the rainbow salad also has corn in it. So honestly, I can't really think of a reason. It's all about getting diversity, right? If you're eating one thing all of the time, you're not going to get all the nutrients that you need. So if you're eating corn all of the time, and actually too, so a lot of people say that like a corn tortilla is a better option to the flour tortilla because it's broken down less. So when you look at a corn tortilla, it's not like, to make a wheat tortilla or just like a white tortilla, you've got to refine it a lot. So, but if you look at a corn tortilla, there's more texture, right? It's a little bit different. So those are options, but yes, it does have a little bit more of those simple sugars in it. That insoluble fiber that we were talking about, we already talked about easing constipation and good for your colon health. That soluble fiber will lower your blood cholesterol, will help to lower your blood cholesterol, right? Helps you stay fuller longer, helps to improve the blood sugars, keeping them nice and stable. So, how much fiber? So, the average American is getting about 12 to 18 grams of fiber per day. You guys are probably getting more than that just coming to this class. You know, I know that you're putting these good practices in. You're probably getting more fiber than that. The recommended daily allowance is for women, you need to be getting at least 25 grams a day. At least. Men, 35 grams a day. But if you get more fiber than that, yay, go. Get more. It's okay. Now, I will caution, because often I'm having to tell my clients, you need to get more vegetables, you need to get more vegetables. And they're like, but then my stomach and I get gassy and all that. Well, add it in as works for you, right? So say you're getting, so a serving of vegetables, does anyone know what a serving of vegetables counts as? How much is a serving of vegetables? Well, so yes, so cooked would be about a half a cup. A full cup, if it's raw, would be a serving of vegetables. You're supposed to be getting, see, I want to say how many servings of vegetables you're supposed to get, but I am confused now because I keep getting different recommendations when I read things. So I'm going to say 5 to 8 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. And it depends on what we're talking about too. So you're looking at the USDA My Plate or food pyramid. They might not be requiring or asking for as much, but you can get more than that. I get way more than that. But if you're getting your 5 to 8 cups a day, now the fruit part is the part that you probably want to keep a serving to a half cup. So that would be a half cup would be a serving of fruit, or a medium small size fruit. But to get that fiber, getting those fruits and vegetables in. And so do it slowly. So say you're doing 3 servings a day. Say you would have like the typical American plate, that half of it is meat or starch or something like that. And then you have a little bit of cooked spinach, and then look, I had something green. I hear this from people. You're like, I had my vegetables. And it's maybe a fourth of a cup, right? So if that's what you're doing, or even if you're only doing 3 servings a day, just add in a serving, and just pay attention to that. And then next day, add in another serving, or however long, because you don't want that adverse effect to keep you from eating all the fiber and vegetables that you need to have. But at first, your gut microbiome and your body's going to need to adjust. It's going to be like, whoa, I'm not used to all of this, but it will adjust. I promise you.
Does it matter whether you get your veggies from a can versus frozen versus natural?
She's asking if whole fresh fruits as opposed to frozen vegetables, as opposed to canned vegetables, right? So I'll just start with the canned. The process of heating, of canning, all that is going to break down the nutrients in the can, right? Now, when it comes to beans and stuff like that, when we're talking about black beans, pinto beans, chickpeas and stuff like that, you're fine. You can go with the canned. That's okay. But vegetables, and so those would be your last option. If you have no other option, don't not eat the canned vegetables. But if you can get frozen or you can get fresh, you're okay. Frozen, nutrient-wise, is looking about the same as fresh. Now, the fresher you can get them, the better, because once they're clipped off the vine or the tree or whatever, it slowly starts to lose its nutrient value. So if you can go to a farmer's market, I highly recommend it. I mean, there are farmers markets here around San Antonio. You can go, and the farmers, they just harvested it that morning or the night before. And it tastes better, right? Yeah. All right. So how can we get that much fiber? We do that with complex carbs, which fruits and vegetables, right? But notice there's bread on there. You can have bread. Now you might have to ease into this, right? So if you just like white bread, or if you're trying to change your tastes, it takes a while to change your taste, but you can, right? So just like exposing a child to new tastes, you can expose yourself to new tastes, things that you thought that you didn't like and now you liked. And sometimes it's a matter, I have found, of it just wasn't prepared well, or it wasn't prepared in a fashion that was good for you. And you're like, can you think of an example of something that I thought I never liked these and now I do?
Garbanzo beans is one for me.
Garbanzo beans.
Yeah.
She thought she never liked garbanzo beans, but then now she does. And why do you like them now? Like, what happened?
Because Suzanne gave me a recipe, several of us attended a class. It had all kinds of other wonderful things in it, mint and tomato and olive oil, and it just was such a wonderful little salad. I don't know if you guys remember that class, but it was like life-changing for me. So now I use that all the time. So yeah, I kicked it up a notch with other things that I like. I was able to stomach the garbanzo beans, so now I do them all the time.
So finding those recipes. So she was talking about how she likes garbanzo beans now because Suzanne brought her a recipe, and it had the right amount of oils, fats, the right amount of flavors, that acid, salt, sugar, fat, right? But in the right balance and the right seasoning. So I know that Suzanne talks about seasonings a lot. And so having that just right seasoning to make the chickpeas sing, right? To make it sing, to find that recipe. And I'm also, as we get older, we realize that there are things that we can try it. Like, what is it going to hurt us? If we don't like it, then, we don't, again. But if we know it's good for us, sometimes you don't want to suffer through it. If you really, really hate something, then don't. And sometimes too, you might have a little bit of an intolerance to certain fruits and vegetables, and that's your body telling you, I don't eat this. And that's okay. But experiment. You're going to hear me say that. You've heard me say that in every class, right? Experiment. Find what works for you. And that's why we bring you these recipes also, right? Because there might be things in here. Eliminate the things that you don't like. I know there are some of you so this has bell pepper in it. I know there are some of you that your GI tract does not do well with bell pepper, right? You might have some GERD, you might have some upset. So you can change these things out. But there's lots of options here, and you can get creative about it. I want to talk about bread. Can anyone tell me any breads, whole grain, good breads that you didn't like before, that you've discovered, that's new, like brand names? Any breads that no one eats bread anymore. They're like, I just don't do it.
I prefer tortillas.
She prefers tortillas. Okay. With tortillas, they have whole grain tortillas, right? So yeah, and corn tortillas. Okay, you can get a more whole grain tortilla. I know. So I was going to recommend for bread, Ezekiel bread. Does anyone? Everybody just said yes. Ezekiel bread. Now Ezekiel bread often is in the freezer section because it is a sprouted grain bread. Someone has some right here. It's your sandwich for after treatment. With almond butter. Delicious. I'm going to, you know what? I'm going to have to steal that. Almond butter and peanut butter. Yes. I'm going to give you a hug. That's what I brought some dates last week for Valentine's Day, and I put almond butter in it, but I had to say, if you're allergic to peanuts, be careful because I do both at the same time. So I can't guarantee that there's no peanuts in the almond butter. Yeah, so it's a sprouted bread. Since it's sprouted, that means it has more protein. If you look at the nutritional facts on it, I don't have it memorized, but it does have more protein because it's a sprouted bread. Um, the when it was first introduced to me, it took me a while to get to it, but then my friend said, you got to toast it. I wasn't that big of a toaster. She was like, you need to toast it or at least warm it up, especially since it comes in the frozen section, right? So toast it, warm it up, because I was just kind of leaving it out and letting it get soft, so it would be kind of like a bread. But at least maybe on a low setting, unless you like yours crispy. I love it when it's crispy too. So Ezekiel bread is a good choice, but Ezekiel also makes tortillas. Yep, they have tortillas. They have English muffins.
They have it with
Like
raisins
the raisin and cinnamon is one of my favorite. That's what I put my almond butter and peanut butter on. The raisin cinnamon, right?
Love that one.
So good. So Ezekiel bread, Dave's Killer Bread is also a really good option. Yeah, everybody just went, yes. Plus that has nuts and seeds in it too, so that's really nice and satiating. And also, I know that you guys are going to agree with this because they make the thin slice one, so you can get, because we don't need that much, right, of it. So you don't have to have like 120 calorie slice of bread. If you want to have one on the top and the bottom, get that thin sliced bread. It's only 70 calories, top and bottom, only 140.
That one's
Right.
not in the freezer section.
That one is not in the freezer section. Right. And I will say too, I discovered that Trader Joe's will have fresh Ezekiel bread sometimes. So if you ever want to be like, hey, fresh. Yeah, because we're just used to buying it frozen, but
Yeah.
Trader Joe's does have it.
I usually just get it at Sprouts.
Sprouts. Oh, and that's the thing too. It doesn't have to be Ezekiel bread because Sprouts has sprouted grain bread and they'll have it fresh. So you don't have to just get that brand, right? But looking for a sprouted bread and experimenting, finding the different, because you'll notice, well, just say with the Ezekiel bread, but any sprouted bread, like some will be like more like a flax mix or a whole grain mix or a 9-grain mix, or experiment with finding the one that you like, right? Because I was just getting, I think Ezekiel has a sesame one. So I was getting the sesame one and I was kind of like, meh. But then I got the flax one and I was like, I like this one. And then of course the cinnamon raisin.
Yes,
It's a really great alternative
Some almond butter.
with some almond butter. Yep.
I've been buying this one's probably not as good, the Oral Wheat 100% whole grain.
Yes.
It doesn't have any sugar in it.
The Oral Wheat, yeah. And you know what else is good? So she's talking about the Oral Wheat 100% whole grain. And that's what you want to look forward to. So say you're not going to go over to the Dave's Killer Bread and the Ezekiel or whatever. You're just going to do your Oral Wheat or any store-bought brand. Just look at the back of it. Make sure that that first ingredient is whole grain wheat, or 100% whole wheat, or whole wheat at least on the first ingredient. Maybe a couple down, it might have a little bit more processed wheat, but you want the majority of it to be
I don't
whole
remember
wheat.
Exactly what the ingredients were, what order, but I just went with the no sugars, what got me.
Right.
What's the name of it?
Oro
I think
wheat.
it's Oral Wheat.
Yeah.
Does it have a-
Oh.
This is 100% whole grain. It's
It
just
says
a
100%
smaller
whole
loaf.
grain.
It's a little pricier than the other bread. I thought.
Where do you usually buy that from?
HEB.
HEB.
I need to look.
But
Yeah.
some HEBs carry certain breads and some of them don't, so that's the other thing.
Right. But I mean, even if they don't have that brand, again, just look at that first ingredient. I like that Oral Wheat also because it doesn't have added sugar, and also because of the oil that they use. They use a better oil, which I can't remember exactly what it was, but I do buy that one sometimes.
How nutritious is gluten-free?
How nutritious is gluten-free? So you can get all the nutrients you need and be gluten-free. And some people find that that works really well for them. So probably only I don't remember exactly. I think it was less than 1% of the population, or 0.5% of the population is actually celiac, or, but we often have some intolerances. So I'm glad you brought this up. The reason that more people are becoming gluten intolerant, so they say, is because, so wheat, let's go back. So wheat, right? See how that's long and, amber waves of grain and all that, right? What they've done here in order to be able to process the wheat faster for us is there are crossbreeding the plants so that they're shorter. And it's that crossbreeding of the plants, the changing of the genetic structure of the plant, that seems to be, this is proposed, that seems to be what is making people a little bit more gluten intolerant. So that might be part of it too. So again, experimenting and figuring out, you can do some diets or just eliminating it for a little while and see how you feel. So if you're eliminating gluten, but for most people, it's really not an issue. It might be, when people talk about weight loss and, feeling better because your blood sugar is not spiking because you're doing gluten-free, it's because a lot of times when people are doing gluten-free, they're just not doing it. They're just not doing bread. They're not doing pasta. They're not doing those things that might become like more of a simple sugar. And so that might be why they're losing weight, or that might be why they're not having the up and downs in their blood glucose. That's a really good question.
So bread that's labeled as gluten-free isn't necessarily a healthier bread.
So a bread that's labeled as...
Just the name by itself doesn't mean healthy.
So a bread that's labeled as gluten-free doesn't exactly mean that it's healthy, is what she's saying. And I would have to agree with you, because so I like to do different diets just to experiment with them, so that when I work with my clients and I can say, yes, I know what that feels like, right? So I'll do, something for 2 to 4 weeks, if it's not dumb, but something that seems like, okay, why are people doing that? Maybe it's detox diets, maybe it's different ways of, they're saying, oh, if you do this, then you'll gain more muscle. And as we're getting older, or I'm more concerned with keeping that muscle mass because I'm going to live to 120. But so I've done some gluten-free. And so I go to the store and I say, okay, let's try. And I've had some delicious gluten-free breads that are made like out of like amaranth and not rye. What are some of the pumpernickel? Are those gluten-free? Sometimes. Yeah. Almond. Yeah. Sometimes like a coconut flour maybe, or something like that. Yeah. And it tastes great, but it's like a white piece of bread that has, for me, too many ingredients on the back of it. And I'm like, so what did they have to do to this bean, flour, whatever, to make it taste like a bread? And it's just a white piece of bread. So that's a personal thing for me. I hesitate to say it, but yeah, I mean, for me, I'm just like, well, yes, this says it's gluten-free, but it's just a bunch of processed stuff. That's when we...
Something out, they put something else in.
If you take something out, right, what do you have to put in the guar gum and the whatever to... Yeah, to make it stabilize, to make it work like a bread. Like, I probably should have gotten into this on the protein presentation, but like meat substitutes. Yeah, I mean, if you look at the back, you're looking at a lot of processed things like whey protein isolates or whatever, that it might be better for you just to have a steak. Yeah, so you have to like really, this is when these education classes are really beneficial to you, because now you can go to the grocery store and at least be a little bit more knowledgeable and please feel free to call me on these slides, and I have cards here too. Call me and ask me, text me. I'm like, I'm at the grocery store, and what do you think about this? I love this stuff. I can talk about it all day. So don't be shy. I'm here for you. I love you also. Yeah. So ask me. You're getting a lot of knowledge here. So how do we get more carbohydrates? We're eating the rainbow. Why is eating the rainbow important?
The color itself, that means different nutrients.
Because the color itself has different nutrients. That is phytonutrients, right? So we can talk about A, B, C vitamins. We can talk about K, potassium, and minerals, and whatever. We know we've broken all that stuff down. But that's why I brought these tomatoes. Because so this is from Costco, and this is different kinds of tomatoes all in one container. All right. So I wanted to show you the packaging in case you're at Costco and you're like, ooh, I want to get some of those. But just so you can see here, I'm not sure if you can see here, that, and I washed my hands like really, really well before this. So I'll just show you. So we've got red, we've got yellow tomatoes, we've got orange tomatoes. So all in just tomatoes, we've got all kinds of phytonutrients, things called like, oh, let me go forward. Here we go. Phytochemicals are beneficial plant compounds. Okay? So they help to stabilize free radicals. Free radicals are things in the body that might start breaking down, creating damage in your cells, creating damage in your tissues. Antioxidants. And these phytochemicals, along with the other minerals and vitamins that you're consuming, will help to inhibit cancer cells and tumors. Okay? And besides just feeding your body. So the thing that excites me about these, beside the fact that they're delicious, so whenever you're feeling snacky, just take this whole thing, just put it on your counter, and you can just pop them like grapes. And people are laughing at me. Okay, this is where my nutritionist personality comes out. They're like, yeah, I'm totally going to do that. Yeah. But sometimes, and here's another class that I want to do with you guys, is just talking about habits, right? Sometimes you need a break. You get up from your desk, I just need a change of scenery. And what do? You walk in the kitchen or wherever the snacks are. So if you do this, maybe you get yourself some hot water, maybe you get some tea, finding different options to the chocolate chip cookie or the brownie that you might be dreaming about or thinking about or searching for or gonna go drive to. Just this might be enough. You did the motion. I'm gonna go back to work. And you walk around, maybe you walk. For the next week here, we can walk. It's beautiful outside. So nice. That's why I'm wearing pastels, because even though it's February 21st, it's spring in San Antonio. But so this yellow one is going to have different phytochemicals, and this orange one is going to have different phytochemicals. I mean, a lot of the same, right? They're tomatoes. They've got their vitamin C and all the other good things in it. But check this one out. So this one is red, but on the inside, the seeds are kind of greenish, right? Another phytochemical. This is like in one species, you have all that. So I'll put these here since I manhandled them. But if you want, I'm going to pass these around if you guys want to try. Here, I even brought a spoon. If you want to try some, and you can pick out the colors that you want to try. I'll pass them around. There you go.
So the same thing is true of bell peppers that come in different colors. You can also eat them as snacks.
The same thing is true of bell peppers. You can also eat them as snacks. Really good idea. Really nice crunch there. but you've got your green, your red, your yellow. And has anyone tried those like marbled ones? The red, the red bell peppers, they're like a hybrid. They have yellow and red in them. I say marbled, but it's more like a kind of a streak of fiery pattern.
When you buy your bell peppers, at the bottom of them,
Uh-huh.
be sure there's 4 tongs on them, because that's the female, and they're sweeter than the one with the 3, which is a male.
Huh.
So take them and buy 2 and try it. We were part of a study for a grocery store, and that the 4 on the bottom are sweeter than a 3.
Okay, so listen to this. I did not know this. I love you guys. I learned so much. I just want to be here all the time. So what she was saying is that a bell pepper, you turn it over, right? So at the bottom, you call them tongs, the little indentions, the quarters, yeah, at the bottom. If there's 4 of them, it's female, and it's sweeter, of course. If there's 3 at the bottom, it's male. And so there's your homework. Go forth and go see if you can even find, because I'm thinking in my head.
You can, if you stand there and people look at you at the grocery store, because we just got a whole case of all females in our little town.
Uh-huh.
In that, because we've let it be known, and so whoever they're hired that way.
Just female bell peppers.
Right, but actually look, and the female one will last longer than the male.
The female one will last longer too than the male one. So there you go, buying your produce. This is why we come. This is why we have this community, because we're all learning. Wow.
Can you use any of them to be dipped into something?
Can you use any of them to be dipped into something? Of course. So hummus. Yeah. So this is a really good point here. She's asking about dipping our vegetables, right? And then she said hummus. Yeah, hummus. So that's a really good point. So your vegetables are going to have a good amount of fiber in them that's going to keep your blood sugar regulated, right? But if you add in the protein from the hummus, then even better. So if you are making dips, I would, and you probably already do this already, but if you are already making dips, try to use like a yogurt, a Greek yogurt to make your dips with, right? Yeah, and putting all those herbs and everything in there, if you're going to make a dip like that. But hummus, can anyone think of like whatever, guacamole? And so when the guacamole is on the table, the hummus is on the table, you're grabbing the vegetables, right? You're not grabbing the chips, right? You're going for the like, yeah, because my even though I eat hummus all the time, like no one else in my house did up till like a year ago, and now all of a sudden my son is eating all of my hummus. I was never running out of it before because no one else ate it, and then I go to make a salad and there's no hummus. But then he goes, well, we need some chips. And I was like, no, you do not. I will cut or first let me teach you how to cut the cucumber or the bell pepper or whatever else. And if you want to do something like the tomatoes with the hummus, does anyone else have cocktail forks? So little tiny forks, right? The little cocktail forks. These pierce really, really well. Can dip it just the same. So here's something I want to point out to you when you are making your plate. So this is the My Plate that the USDA puts out. And they're telling you fruits, that half of your plate should be fruits and vegetables. Yay, they have got to this point. That makes me happy that they've gotten to the point that they're telling you, because this is what I say all the time. Half should be fruits and vegetables. Then you've got some proteins here. Then you've got some whole grains. I should say whole grains. And then they still have got that dairy there. Not so sure about that. But this is from the Harvard School of Public Health. All right. So they're specifically saying to you, needs to be more vegetables. You're still got half of your plate. More veggies. Potatoes and French fries don't count. Potato. It's a tuber, right? So it's a vegetable, yeah. Yeah, it's a vegetable. And you can, potatoes, great. You can have potatoes. Sweet potatoes, someone said also. But you can have white potatoes too. They've got fiber, they've got potassium, and if you can get to the point that you're scrubbing your potatoes really, really well and eat that skin. Eat the skin, okay? So it says potatoes don't count, but that is, they're probably talking to the people who, are just eating French fries, right? Or chips or whatever. The healthy oils, like we talked about last time. So you cooking and on your salads that you're having healthy oils instead of butter. Some butter is okay. Avoiding trans fats is really important. Eating all different types of colors of fruits that we already talked about too. And here, water. We're drinking water. We're letting it all go through. Now you can have that in tea or coffee with very little or no sugar. And we're going to talk about this next week. We're going to talk about sweeteners. Okay. So we're going to do, and I know that I teased you 2 weeks ago and I said we're going to talk about hydration and then we didn't get to it. We're going to try to put hydration at the end of the sweetener presentation because it's actually a good thing that we didn't talk about it because I've learned more things or I've remembered more things. So I've kind of bulked it up a little bit when it comes to hydration and dehydration and all that. Eating a variety of whole grains, whole grain bread. We already talked about all of that. And then your healthy protein, choosing fish, poultry, beans, and nuts, limiting your red meat and cheese. Avoid bacon, cold cuts, and processed meats. I'm so sorry, but they are known carcinogens. I used to kind of dance around it, but there's just too much research that's saying that those processed meats are just not good for you. So I need to show you this. Check it out. Just this morning, Rachel's not here, but just this morning, she sent a picture to me and Jose. She made this, I guess last night or the night before. Look at that. It looks like from a magazine. Yeah, I mean, and actually the pictures were actually prettier than this. I cropped them in order to get them on here. But she had some chicken breast, and then she roasted these vegetables. But the thing I loved about this, and I needed to show to you, is it's simple. It doesn't have to be difficult, right? You've got the green. I mean, look, she's got, it looks like she used herbs de Provence with lavender. She's got salt and pepper and herbs de Provence. You can do whatever. If you like rosemary, you like sage, you like thyme. It's not difficult. So you put them in the oven and you make a whole, and this is really great meal prep, right? See how she used the whole tray? I wish she was here. Somebody tell her how I'm singing her praises. But also, she reached out to me and I want you guys to do the same. Show me what you're doing. And my mom and my brother and I are often like sending each other photos like, look what I ate. Of course, we're not sending the photos of the chocolate cake, but that's okay. But it's a good inspiration. And that's why we're here, right? Every single time we come here is I get inspired. So now just talking to you, showing you this stuff, but also hearing what you guys are talking about with your almond butter and your dipping in hummus and all that stuff. My brain is like, okay, so today we're going to go get some hummus and we're going to go get some Ezekiel bread. And so I have so many good things in my brain that I'm not thinking about the other sweets and chocolate and cookies and whatever.
What is the orange? Is it?
Yep, and then you've got some zucchini squash, and then on the squashes too, you can do the yellow. You can do, I wanted to do like a whole class that was just squashes in the fall, because you can do acorn, and there's delicata, and there's so many things to play with. So have fun with that. And I know
Skin on those sweet potatoes.
she did,
That's why I do sweet potato, I do this, now on a regular potato, when I do
right,
that.
but you can just scrub it. And when you scrub it, it also will thin it out a little bit too. Like if you use like a scouring pad or some other kind of scrubber, it'll thin out, because if you think it's a little bit too thick for you,
I don't know, it just doesn't look like it's
it is edible.
friendly.
It is edible. It's friendly. It loves you.
I was thinking about potatoes. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, well, it looks like we've run out of time here, but I think we've pretty much hit on all these. The only last thing I want to say is to keep those glucose levels in range where they want to be, is do your physical activity, right? So I've already talked about pairing it with the protein and the fiber, but do your physical activity, because it works at the moment that you're doing it. It works after you do it. It works the next day. Keep doing your physical activity. Go to your Diva classes. Enjoy, connect, commune. And thank you so much for being here. I love you. I give you hugs.